But it is also you that has gone to the US and continued to engage officials in the White House to create an impression that somehow the Afrikaner community is being persecuted here in South Africa.
It's also not us refusing to condemn Julius Malema when he says, when his chants kill the Boer.
It is you that is in the US and trying to get a sovereign state to somehow come and interfere with the business of South Africa.
We were told that they have been monitoring what is happening in South Africa for a number of years, also under the Biden administration. They actually gave us a list of what the...
Guys, so President Ramaphosa has actually responded to Afriforum and Kali Creel, especially in terms of, as regards this visit to the US that Afriforum decided to pay before the official president's, representatives to visit Donald Trump and hopefully repair the way this relationship is just getting sour, all right? And, this is one of the fiercest interviews I think SABC has had with Afriforum. I'll be making a series of videos, about 3 or 4 of them, that actually capture different elements of this whole debate around Afriforum, around the accusations of treason, around whether President Ramaphosa should deal with Afriforum or not, around whether Afriforum has been pushing for a sort of secessionism. Really fireful, if I can use that word. It's a Nigerian colloquial expression we use. It's a fireful interview where this guy Clement Maniatella, and like I'm actually simply observing all of this from the outside, but I'm really beginning to understand how and why the debates are structured the way they are. So we could see here, first of all, I would like us to understand, this is what President Ramaphosa argues. He says that Afriforum is actually doing exactly the same thing that they actually said South Africans shouldn't do. This was how President Ramaphosa responded to Afriforum's visit to the United States.
And Afriforum to meet his representatives.
Well, I do believe, I've heard that Afriforum and Solidarity have met representatives in the US government, and they're doing precisely what we said we as South Africans should not do. We should stop running to other countries. We should discuss our own problems here and find solutions. And that in many ways confirms our own sovereignty. It confirms our standing as a free and independent nation. A nation that can stand proud amongst many other nations and being able to say, we can solve our own problems. We may differ here, but we will find solutions to whatever problems we have. And we have the wherewithal to be able to do that. So I would say we stay here, we solve our problems here, and we embrace one another, and we build a nation. We will never be able to build a nation by just going to complain to other nations in the world. That's how we solve problems.
How do you respond to that?
Yes, and so based on this response, let's just quickly listen to this portion of the interview where Kali and this SABC reporter almost clash on live TV. Right? We see this SABC reporter really trying to hold his cool. You could see that even when Kali tried to greet him and say hello from the United States, his gesture was, you could see he just didn't even want to reply. Just watch.
Back. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has warned Afriforum against creating divisions in the country by seeking interventions from the United States government on South African policies. Afriforum, along with Solidarity and the Solidarity Movement, met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington to discuss concerns about the ANC's governance. The group has raised concerns regarding the Expropriation Act, the Bella Act, and alleged crimes against white farmers. The CEO of Afriforum is Kali Creel, who's joining us now live from the US. Kali, thank you so much for making time. Good evening.
Yes, good evening to you. It's great speaking to you, and I hope things are well in South Africa.
Are you aware that while you have been there in the U.S., continuing with your discussions with officials in the White House, the U.S. has now permanently cut funding for HIV programs in the country, a decision that's going to have quite major consequences?
Yes, now we've heard that tragic news, and that is why we are so frustrated with ANC leaders and President Ramaphosa for the way they have attacked the U.S. by siding with countries such as Iran, that they have taken an anti-American stance in their foreign policy, that they disrespect property rights, that they discriminate against the human rights of Afrikaners. And all those things we know leads to the fact that the U.S. wants to act. So President Ramaphosa and ANC leaders need to take full responsibility for those negative consequences of their own actions. You see, the thing is they try to evade taking responsibility. Now they're looking for a scapegoat. It's not us that signed the Expropriation Act. It's not us that signed the Bella Act. It's also not us that was seen on a photograph with Iran, the then president of Iran. It's also not us refusing to condemn Julius Malema when he says, when he chants, kill the Boer. It is the ANC leaders and the president, and we are now seeing the terrible consequences, something that we want to try and avert.
But it is also you that has gone to the U.S. and continue to engage officials in the White House to create an impression that somehow the Afrikaner community is being persecuted here in South Africa. It is you that is in the U.S. and trying to get a sovereign state to somehow come and interfere with the business of South Africa when South Africa actually in turn respects the sovereignty of the U.S. and any other country and respects the decision they take, whether they agree with them or not. So your actions have not helped at all.
No, our actions is aimed at trying to solve the situation. When we speak to people here, yesterday we had a meeting at Congress, and we were told that they have been monitoring what is happening in South Africa for a number of years, also under the Biden administration. They actually gave us a list of what the issues are that they've seen. So it's not Afriforum now that comes to the fore and tell them things that they did not know. For instance, we were told yesterday in Congress that the video of Julius Malema chanting, kill the Boer, kill the farmer, that video has been circulating within the people that are, the circles of the people that are in charge. So they've seen what is happening, and they have already last year, you know, that there was a bill placed on in Congress with regard to revising the ties with South Africa, and we also within solidarity came to the U.S. to urge them not to kick South Africa out of AGOA. But they said to us, even if they don't want to, AGOA requires respect for property rights, AGOA requires respect for human rights, AGOA requires a country should not act directly against the interests of the U.S. And we need to solve those things. That is why we are here. Those politicians and even the ambassador here, if they think they're going to solve this by just saying, you know what, this is just a big misunderstanding or this is misinformation, they will fail. And if they fail, it's to the detriment of all of us. We believe they should take full responsibility and say, we will look at specific foreign policy. They don't have to side with the U.S. India is part of BRICS as well as a good relationship with the USA. And that's in the interest of their people. In the interest of South African people, we should not get involved in these fights. We should make sure that we put our people first. We should not, when we know capital flees areas where property rights are not respected, we should not, the president should not sign an act that says in Article 12.3, Section 12.3, expropriation can be done with no compensation. being an open-ended clause, because those issues listed, they say it's including but not limited to, with a section as Section 19.8 that says, well, you can be expropriated and you can go to court later, and it might take you 5 years with your own money and you don't have funds. Those are the real issues that need to be addressed if we want to save PEPFAR, if we want to save AGOA. And this is why we are saying, don't punish South Africa. That is our message here. The ordinary people of South Africa is not responsible for this. So pressure should be placed on specific leaders that are corrupt, that behave irresponsibly.
Yes, so you can see he's really trying to hold his cool, all right, in what he argues is an attempt by Afriforum to continuously push misinformation and disinformation in the United States. He's really angry. Many times when you watch this interview, you can see that, you know, the questioning, the way he asks the questions to Kali actually thinks that, you know, President Ramaphosa should be blamed. Now that PEPFAR is gone indefinitely from South Africa, he thinks that President Ramaphosa and the ANC reps who actually have been pushing for what he calls these policies that are left-wing and you know, all of that should be blamed, and that now they are looking for a scapegoat, and that Afriforum seems to be that's appropriate, effective scapegoat, so to speak, and that they wouldn't take it lying down. Now, the argument from Afriforum is that they think that, first of all, the US has actually been watching South Africa for a long time, even before President Trump, I think under Joe Biden, and they've been compiling, I think some of the advisors of Donald Trump have been compiling a list of, you know, South Africa's maybe violation of some of his federal laws, and especially in terms now of AGOA, some of those violations actually how they might impact South Africa's eligibility for being in the you know, AGOA program that actually allows goods exported from South Africa to enter into the US market tariff-free, which is a really large That's crazy, because I think if you listen to Rob Hersov closely, he says that China actually exports 60% of its export thereabout to the US market. So that market is not a market that you joke with. Now, AGOA now provides South Africans the opportunity to have access to that market tariff-free. All right, so you can imagine how much income has been coming into South Africa and now to the government and also to SASA to pay things like SASA and all that in form of taxes and all of that. Now, to get AGOA caught, many argue anyway that it will also affect the Afrikaners, because they are most of the farm products and that actually they produce are actually those that benefit from AGOA you know, participation. But anyway, it would be a shock to South Africa if AGOA goes, all right? So Kali is actually saying that President Ramaphosa should be blamed. He actually argues that President Afriforum is not the one that was seen in a picture with, you know, I think ANC officials and the Iranian leader, that the Afriforum wasn't the one who passed, like you could hear, the Bella Act and the Expropriation Act, so that the US has been watching South Africa for a long time, you know, and that this, what is really happening now is actually a culmination of that, you know, that whole thing. And so, for me, this is actually, I just think that it's difficult, South Africa, honestly. As a West African, it's really difficult to comment on some of these issues I see. And it's unfortunate, being the fact that this is also a part of Africa, which we all claim, you know, as Africans to love and, you know, cherish. It's just really unfortunate that it's challenging to find a leader that can really push for the kind of unity that such a country like South Africa needs. Because if you listen to Prince Machele's interview recently with Alec Hogg, he argues that the future of South Africa lies in the emergence of a leader who would rise from a party. He doesn't know if that party exists yet, but that party would be a party that would unite all South Africans under this kind of rainbow that President Mandela did. It might not be a rainbow concept this time, but there has to be a form of unity. And that is where South Africa will thrive as a nation. If the whole current trajectory now of saying kick Abahambe, probably to the whites, or Abahambe to the coloreds, or to the whatever it is, and probably one race just wants to be the, for South Africa. This can actually happen in other parts, because other parts of Africa didn't necessarily have this whole settler kind of history. All right, like I told you, I think when I was replying to your comment yesterday, in Nigeria, for example, in Ghana, for example, we really didn't see much of the violence associated with freedom fighting. All right, so except probably if you go to Cape Verde, where we saw the likes of Amilcar Cabral, the revolutionary, being close to Frelimo and fighting off, I think, Spanish and Portuguese incursions in that region. But other than that, in West Africa, what we saw was majorly Francophone and Anglophone countries who really rose up and demanded for independence. Nigeria and Ghana, for example, for the British, we saw a sort of like a calculated exit of the British colonial machinery physically anyway, out of these lands. But then many argue that economically there was still the machine of colonialism in the form of neo-colonialism that continuously wreaked havoc, to the point where Kwame Nkrumah argued that, political independence without economic independence is useless. All right, so but we didn't really have this kind of different people groups coming to form a nation as we see in South Africa. And so because of the fact that this is how the origin of South Africa, has begun and erupted and emerged and evolved through time, for one group now to wake up and say that this is our land and this is how things would be, it would necessarily, I think this is now me just thinking logically, it would necessarily cause a lot of conflict. And I think this is what we're really seeing going on at the moment. And where one group thinks, Afriforum, the Afrikaners, especially those represented by Afriforum, think that President Ramaphosa snubbed them, and they feel disrespected, and they feel that also the Bella Bill is actually an attack to their culture, to their personality, their being as people. And so this whole thing is really just a really difficult one. But anyway, raising voices and all these arguments, I think it might not be the way forward to go, but somehow there has to be a leader that would emerge in South Africa that would need to really make everyone, despite their differences, feel at home. And it might be painful, especially for those who are victims of probably apartheid, all right, because it would be like, wow, so all of this pain we went through as a people, our fathers have told us a lot about our lands that have been stolen. We just accept that and just flow for the sake of peace. This is how many people would read such a movement. But wisdom demands, I think I was reading a book the other day that says that at the moment Chris Hani was murdered by Jalus Falus, the country was ready to boil into a civil war. And this is the kind of bloody uprising that actually occurred also in Ghana in 1979, what they call the June 4th Revolution, when, it felt like the land was demanding for blood. This is how Jerry Rawlings describes what happened in Ghana. And there were assassinations that went on because the junior officers in the army were so angry. They just couldn't live to see that those who they felt had corrupted the land were still alive. So ex-presidents, ex-military leaders were murdered in cold blood and all of that. And so Jerry Rawlings, actually, who was the former president of Ghana at the time, said he just wouldn't stop this because it appears that the land was actually demanding for. And if he had stopped that demand, he might actually have been a victim. So that's why somehow when you think of what President Mandela did during that period, leadership had to rise. President Mandela rose because without the way he managed that period, South Africa, it would have been something else. A civil war that has a racial tone to it in Africa, bro, you just don't even want to think about that. It would have been 20 times the demise of the Rhodesians in Zimbabwe. All right, so that kind of leader is, I think, the kind of leader that would lead South Africa into the future, into a sustainable future. But until that kind of leader emerges, this whole thing with Afriforum, the Africana, and all of that, and I'm saying this because I'm just trying to really think out loud from the perspective of understanding the origins of where South Africa came from into nationhood, and having that squashed. I think, I don't know, it might be a revolution that would demand the paying of a huge price for the people living in that region. But at the end of the day, at what cost? And who really does this gain, or who does it benefit? But anyway, this is just me ranting anyway, I don't know. But what do you guys think about this interview? Kali and Clement Mayatela of SABC, really almost clashing on live TV. Share your thoughts in the comments.